and wrote that banger song. But I understand that people are concerned because they have made it their livelihood. And maybe some of them have now are looking at the possibility of having to go back to work or whatever because the dungeon tubing ceiling is breaking. We had a good run, 2016 through 2023. Uh, Geekdom had a good run. D&D had a good run. The hobby had a good run, and COVID helped, and everything else helped. But the glass ceiling broke, and now in 2025, 2026, it's changing. It's evolving. It's not what it was last year. And if you're one of those people who put all your eggs in that basket and thought that the dungeon tubing thing was going to carry you into retirement, no, it's a fickle genre. It's always been a fickle genre. Um, as long as the internet in all its major forms has existed, there have been people who have found ways to talk about a hobby, be that any hobby, anything, and then people who have found ways to argue with the people talking about said hobby. So the Bob World Builder, Genie D, Professor Dungeon Master, Nerd Cognito, whatever dungeon tubing thing that Professor DM and Stephen Glicker were talking about, that's just one aspect of something that's been around as long as the internet's been around. Um, People were talking about all the stuff we're talking about today from day one about the hobby. Um, the perfect example is the people who've made all their channels about D&D horror stories or how to build Steve the Cat in Game System of Choice. But that's not new. There's always been theory crafting and horror stories. And before D&D, it was something else. It was football. It was baseball. It was the stock market. It was farming. It was politics. It's just part of the industry, and the industry is fickle. It's a game. It's entertainment, and entertainment changes, and the desires of the fan base changes, and the fan base changes. And YouTube changed. It's not what it was a day ago. It's not what it was a year ago. It's not what it was 10 years ago. And the successful YouTubers, the successful VTubers, the successful Twitchers and Twitterers, and are the ones who know how to pivot. Um, Maybe I have an interesting insight on it because I grew up in the industry. I grew up in North Hollywood. I was surrounded by industry insiders, you know, from almost the moment I could walk in one form or another. I have, the distinct honor of being able to have said I hung around with people who were industry, and that, there's still people in my life who are, Hollywood, who'd be considered Hollywood royalty or industry people. Um, so I know how fickle the industry can be. All dungeon tubing is another aspect of the industry, and the fact that that industry is now changing, and people who were making bank off of it a year ago are now watching that bank vanish. Well, I mean, it's fickle. People are fickle, and if you don't change and you don't adapt, it's fickle. I mean, I've changed my channel. I'm focusing more on shorts. I'm focusing more on quicker stuff. I was trying to do the OGGM looks at games thing, but I got called out, and they weren't making a lot of things. So I'm like, okay, that's not what's working. What's working? What has gotten me to 2,800 subs? What will get me to 2,300 subs? What will get me to 4,000 subs? I don't know, because I can't predict what you guys are going to be interested in from one day to the next. The industry changes. VTuber changes. The algorithm changed. YouTube changed. YouTube will change again. Maybe tomorrow there'll be a new thing that takes the place of YouTube. There's Rumble and Twitter and Twitch and Blue Sky and Threads, and I'm sure there are ones I don't know the names of. And that's just talking about here in the United States. Who knows about the rest of the world? I don't know what Europe or Asia or any of those other places has to monitor their pop culture, but I know the industry. Um, are you hiding? Hi, Kat. Steve, say hi. You're being watched by 17 people. So I understand that Professor DM is concerned. I understand that Genie D is concerned, but it's not like this is the first time the glass ceiling broke. In fact, I remember this time last year, people talking about how dungeon tubing was dead and I'm going to have to go back and get a job. Well, I would remind you of the immortal words of a very famous actor: never quit your day job, and never say no to work, and never quit a series, and adapt. Um, so right now, dungeon tubing is just one aspect of something that already existed, right? And the internet was passionate about it, but then the internet is fickle. There's three things people are always going to use the internet about: looking at tiddlies, looking at pictures of cats, and bad mouthing some aspect of some of culture or subculture. And there's a subculture and a subculture and a subculture. And dungeon tubing was just one aspect. And maybe we got complacent. Maybe we figured the the golden teat was always going to be there to suck on. There was always going to be something else to talk about with Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or whatever. So it's easy to understand that people like Bob Will Builder and Professor DM, who are have built their whole thing over this dungeon choosing thing. But I knew going in 10 years ago when I started this, it was going to be fickle. I had very specific goals. I had very specific things I wanted to do, but also growing up in the industry, I understood that it was fickle and it could change. So it changed. Yeah, I mean, we should all seen the change coming because the internet changed and people changed and the politics changed and it'll change again. Everybody's complaining about the woke mafia and the woke mob and how the woke ruined everything. But a year from now, it'll be something else. Um, so yeah, you have to pivot. And who are the most successful people in geekdom? They're the ones that did something else. We can look at some of the girls in VTubing who, once they realized they weren't making enough money as they were, they branched out. They did something else. Onigiri started doing cooking videos, and Melody does sex work, um, and that's just one example. But it's just you've got to pivot, you've got to evolve, and you should have known going in, panicky person who's pasting these videos that your career's over and you're have to get a job, to quit your day job and to great, you were successful and you had a wonderful run, but you should have known that run was going to end. So uh is dungeon tubing going to die? No, it's not going to die because it's been around as long as D&D's been around. It just, before there was the internet, we were printing it out on paper and stuff like that. There's nothing new or different about dungeon tubing other than it's on YouTube. I'm going to make a video about how to stat out Steve the Cat for D&D. Well, if you go back to the very early days of the hobby, people were making articles all the time. I remember the Dungeon magazine that had how to stat out Bugs Bunny for D&D. Who remembers that, right? Hi, Aaron. Uh, Aaron's one of my oldest fans. He's top five people that I respect. Of course, that's not saying much because I can only count to five. So you're all my top five people that I appreciate and respect. So yeah, a year from now, the environment will change, and the people who were making millions of dollars or hundreds of dollars or tens of dollars or fives of dollars, I really appreciate you, Aaron. You know that, right? You always make me think, and you're one of my oldest and most consistent subscribers. So I appreciate you a lot, man. Maybe those people will pivot and they'll find a way. Maybe the pendulum will swing back, and all the people who are saying, "Oh, the hobby's going to be dead," it'll get a jump in the arm in 2026. And the people who are like, "Oh, I thought I was going to be dead," but now everything's okay, and I'm making more money than ever because X happened. I don't know. You can't predict what the wackiness of D&D is going to be or what people are going to find interest in. I mean, uh, for the past 3 years, Mouse won VTuber of the Year, and then this year she didn't win it because somebody came along and did something different and unique, and the audience is fickle. And all the people that voted for Mouse for the past 3 years voted for this barbecued peanut or whatever his name is. Um, So, yeah. And hopefully the people who are smart, like Stephen Glicker and Professor DM, me, um, will pivot and find something new and different. And maybe they'll succeed, maybe they'll fail, maybe they'll go on. Maybe the long predicted Genie D OnlyFans will finally become a thing because let's face it, it's probably going to happen. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. You don't know. Anybody knows. And if you do know, uh, bet money on it. Bet money on it. So, yeah. Uh, but is the dungeon tubing going to end? No. No. There's always going to be some idiot with a fat camera and a cat and an opinion to talk about this ridiculous hobby for a couple minutes. Oh wait, that's me. Um, you got to pivot. You got to evolve. You got to understand the hobby is fickle. Entertainment is fickle. Humans are fickle. Um, we're puppies. We're easily distracted. And if you don't pivot with whatever direction the hobby is going to go next year, 2027, with this supposed AD&D thing that may or may not happen, just do your own thing. You are your main audience, okay? Not the 10 people, 100 people, 10,000 people. It's you, right? If you're doing something that you enjoy doing, if it's sitting in a room looking at maps, or me talking to the cat, or making silly songs, or looking at the D&D news, but as long as that gives you joy and you feel like, hey, I did something good today, and now I can go back to my Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job, washing dishes or selling insurance or being a billionaire. But for 10 minutes, I talked about something I was passionate about and put it out there. And maybe people will watch it, maybe people won't. But I'm my biggest audience, and I'm doing what I do because I enjoy doing it. And as long as the 7 of you are dungeon tubing because you enjoy it, not because you thought it was going to make you rich, then you've already won. And if you got into this because you thought it was going to make you money, and it was just a grind, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you understood it was a job, and that jobs have to change. The successful ones change. Denzel, shout out to Denzel. Can't get canceled if you don't sign up. So don't sign up. Right? Just invest in yourself. Just have fun. I don't know how many times a year I say this. I would never say take a drink whenever I say this, because you'd all be dead from alcohol poisoning. It's a silly game. It's a silly game about goblins with sticks. That's all it's ever been for the past 51 years. And we find ways to enjoy it, or be angry about it, or make a little money off of it, and that's great. That's great. But I mean, come on, you guys had to know it was going to crash eventually, because all the things that happened to make it big, they're done and gone. Stranger Things is over. Critical Role is spiraling towards an end, and we're all working again because COVID ended and the world is changing, and we're more worried about what's going out on our window than we are about the tube. Anyways, I have blabbed too much. But yeah. So just, listen to my silly song, have fun, and don't worry too much about it, because, it's a hobby. It's a goofiness. It'll always work out in the end. We're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep doing this for as long as the signal lets me. Happy holidays to all of you. Go to bed. I'll talk to you later. See ya.